Can we? Yes. Okay, let's try. Good morning, everyone. Wait. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining our event today about financing the adoption of passive cooling strategies for a cooler future. My name is Yos Khalouch, and I'm the Director General of the International Institute of Refrigeration. Thank you for being with us and wish you a very active day. We are speaking about the passive cooling solutions. An important topic, particularly in this climate context. We are speaking about extreme heats that we need to address through cooling in a sustainable way, because cooling has associated emissions. We need to adopt a holistic strategy, not only addressing the passive cooling, but also acting on energy efficiency, adopting low GWP in clean refrigerants. So it's a holistic approach that we need to adopt. But within this context, today we are speaking about the passive cooling strategy. It's not nothing new. Actually, it's an ancestral technique that has been already existing through years and centuries. It's only about leveraging this technology in order to, as a collective effort, to keep the 1.5 degrees Celsius on reach. Okay, so. We are going to start with Mr. Matthias Bachmann. Appreciate you are taking part of this event today. Appreciate you have also negotiations. Senior Policy Advisor, Climate, TRR, and Environment. So with your keynote about, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, so the ground is yours, Matthias.
Thank you very much, Yoser. And dear participants, good morning. It's great to be here. I would like to first thank the UNOP-hosted Cool Coalition, the Global ABC, which stands for Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, as well as the IFC, for bringing us together this morning on this very important topic. The facts are very clear. I mean, the causal chains that we are looking here are very evident. I mean, we have heat waves that are increasing in frequency and intensity. These are caused by climate change. This has a negative impact on human health, both physical and mental. I mean, we have worldwide currently about 500,000 people dying because of extreme heat, and about 1.2 billion people at high risk since they lack access to cooling. By 2050, 68% of the world's population is expected to live in urban areas. So this will only increase the challenge we are talking about. It is very important to recognize that the impacts of these challenges are not equal. The most vulnerable and poor people are overproportionally affected because they lack the means to pay for cooling systems, and very often they don't have access to electricity. So for them, extreme heat and heat waves is really a direct challenge to their livelihoods. Extreme heat and heat waves have many other effects other than health. For instance, it affects the ability of kids and students to study in schools, or the productivity of workers that have to labor in the open and uncooled places. But cooling is not only a climate adaptation challenge, it's also a mitigation challenge, challenge for the reduction of emissions. As we know, the demand for cooling is growing is outpacing the ability to construct new power plants. So this puts a huge strain on electricity systems in many countries, and it drives up greenhouse gas emissions. So in a way, cooling and climate change are caught up in a vicious circle. The good news is that there are answers to this challenge, and one answer lies, a very important answer, in passive and nature-based cooling. And the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation, SDC, that I'm representing here today, has experience with such approaches for the last 15 years. We have supported, cooperated with stakeholders and authorities in China, India, and Latin America, promoting solutions such as thermal isolation of roof and walls, reflective surfaces, shading of windows, building orientation, or natural ventilation. Through that work, it has been demonstrated that such measures can reduce the indoor temperature in buildings by 3 to 6 degrees Celsius. It has also been shown that such measures can save 20 to 40% in energy use. And this, of course, depends on the type of building and climatic conditions. But it's a huge saving in any case. There's also evidence that such measures can curb the growth in demand for cooling by 2050 by 24%. And this, of course, results in cost savings, in avoided new cooling equipment, and reduced emissions. The Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation is proud that at COP28 we could announce a new contribution to the UNEP's India Cooling Program, which supports the Indian government in implementing its cooling action plan. The goal here is that India builds an environment which is sustainably cooled, more resilient to extreme heat, and that people have access to reliable, affordable cooling and thermal comfort. There are 3 approaches really that lie at the heart of this endeavor. First is integrating nature-based and passive cooling in public policy and regulation, both at the national and state level. This is really a key lever to scale up and take up such measures more broadly. Secondly, there is a financing challenge, so we need to accelerate access to public and private finance at state level. So this is a challenge really throughout India. There is a lack of, let's say, financial incentives and also financial innovation to make investments attractive in passive cooling and heat resilience in buildings, and also in public spaces. The key criteria for lending remains creditworthiness, and local regulations for sustainable cooling are not easily be linked with financing. Encouragingly, IFC, SDC, and UNEP organize consultations with stakeholders such as builders, developers, and banks, have identified promising approaches to unlock finance. So this is really work in progress, but there is positive prospects ahead. Thirdly and lastly, the approach is to enhance the knowledge and capacity of stakeholders of the building sector. So here we talk about real estate developers, we talk about architects, we talk about engineers. For them to integrate passive and nature-based cooling solutions in their projects, so that residents can enjoy a pleasant indoor climate at an affordable cost. Dear participants, SDC Switzerland is convinced that by investing in passive cooling today, we will foster not only a cooler future, but also a more sustainable and healthier future. And we are convinced that the experience that we are seeing in India can be scaled up or replicated, of course, according to local context in other countries around the world. With this, I'm closing and would like to thank you and wish you a very good event. Unfortunately, I have to run, since I'm also a negotiator for Switzerland, I have to run to a negotiation now. But I'm happy to touch base with colleagues and to hear how the event went. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you. I appreciate you. Gave us some of your valuable time. Thank you. Okay, so Matthias was presenting the challenge when it comes to extreme heats, challenge about financing, particularly citing the case for India to finance the passive cooling, but also we are expecting some promising approach as well, and Resmir Music will present us today. Do you have the pointer? If you, yeah. It's with you? Okay. Yeah, so Resmir will be delivering some key messages from the Cooler Finance report. I'm not able to find it's here, sorry. Okay, so yeah. So the floor is yours, Resmir.
Thank you so much for having me today. Hopefully I can break through all the rest of the noise of COP and get you energized for this morning. Let's see, I can take, I think, this one. So again, my name is Rusmir Music. I am the global cooling lead for IFC. It actually is a new program that we have, graciously sponsored by the UK government. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of our work. I represent IFC. We're the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. So we do private sector investments, but we work with international agencies and with our colleagues at the World Bank on public policy as well. So the point of this is to kind of kick us off for a bit of key messages and set the discussion for later. So the report that you're going to see, it's called Cooler Finance. It was launched in the grouping of the Cool Coalition with the idea of helping to operationalize the global cooling pledge. And if you're not familiar, if you're tuning in online or new, over 70 countries and many private sector agencies, as well as multilateral banks and NGOs, have committed for a world of more sustainable cooling, as well as bringing cooling to those who have not had that before. So let's look at why sustainable cooling. As you heard a little bit from Matthias, cooling plays a dual role, and it's crucial really also first and foremost as an adaptation measure. Last week, the UN Secretary General had an event called Response to Extreme Heat. So we have to really make sure that we're bringing cooling to those who have not had that ability before. But as the global temperatures rise, the demand for cooling is also growing very fast, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So as the temperatures go higher, we all plug in our air conditioners. That leads to emissions because those air conditioners are typically powered by a fairly dirty grid. That leads to more emissions, and you can see how the cycle goes on. So it's very, very crucial that we break this cycle. We bring greener, more efficient cooling technologies. We bring some of the passive cooling technologies and mindsets as somewhat of a cheaper and sometimes very effective strategy, and bring cooling, as I said, to those who have not had it before. Let's talk about first what we mean by sustainable cooling and what we mean by passive cooling. So in the Cooling Coalition, what we mean by sustainable cooling are strategies that are accessible, affordable, scalable, all while minimizing environmental impact. when we talk about cooling, most people think about maybe ACs or refrigeration, as our colleague is here, maybe for food. But cooling actually includes a wide range of solutions. They can be both passive and active, and a lot of them can be about the building design. So we have participants here from the architects community, and a lot of that effort is really making sure that there's a smart building, whether it's insulation, windows, orientation, or others. And passive cooling can be as simple and as effective as just painting your roof white to reflect the sun. One of the examples I like to bring up in my travels is the airport in Amman, Jordan, which IFC actually helped finance as well. And you can see these beautiful kind of overhangs that look like flower petals. And most people think, oh, this is a beautiful aesthetic feature, but it's actually a passive cooling feature as well. So the overhang prevents the rays of the sun from coming down and penetrating the windows that the building has, and it really brings down the temperature of the main terminal down. Ironically, the bottom windows don't have that, so the sun still hits them. So actually, if you go to Jordan, you'll see that the lower floors have curtains that are installed to prevent the sun from coming in. So interestingly, when you start working in buildings, you look around the world and you realize a lot of these design features, which you think are aesthetic, are actually functional just as well. One of the main objectives of the Cooler Finance report was to size the market. So IFC is first and foremost an investment institution. We work a lot with other financial institutions, developers, and private firms. So it was very important for us to sort of show the business case. And we are showing that the market for sustainable cooling in developing economies is expected to more than double, and will be at least $600 billion or more per year by 2050. And what's driving this growth? Obviously, it's rising populations, more people moving into the cities, and the temperatures going up. And as you can see on the chart on the left, Africa is set to experience the fastest growth. This will be 7 times, while South Asia market is projected to grow 4 times. And on the right-hand side, you can see that space cooling, and this includes our passive cooling projections, will play quite a big of a role in this market expansion. And space cooling is actually one of the biggest areas where we see cooling needed the most. The passive cooling market, by our estimates, is in fact already sizable. We are projecting something around $30 billion per year in passive cooling market today. I will confess this was a much harder estimate to make because the costs are usually hidden in the building design. Orienting a building in the right way may kind of be hidden and not included in the passive costs. That sometimes mean that the benefits can be hidden too. So this was a harder space to play. So we think that passive cooling on the building scale, which is part of a larger green building construction, is estimated to be about $15 to $25 billion per year for new builds and about $10 to $15 billion for retrofits. But we think that by 2050, this market could reach about $150 billion per year. You will notice that the numbers are higher for new buildings because changing the design is much easier than retrofitting the building. Retrofitting the building means that parts of that building must be taken off. It also means that things like insulation or roof may be difficult or even impossible to do. And so the retrofit market is, in this case, smaller. Some of it may have to be done on the active parts, but as the world continues to decarbonize, here too, this market could ultimately grow. As I mentioned, passive cooling really is about lowering that upfront need to have an AC in the first place. Or any kind of other forms of active cooling. This can be done on the urban scale through nature-based solutions, as you heard from Matthias and our previous speaker, to bring down the heat in the urban heat island. And in the building scale, I mentioned insulation, windows, reflective paints, and cross-ventilation and others are possible. And the benefits can be quite incredible. UNEP and IFC's analysis in the Global Cooling Watch, which was the first paper, this was released last year at the COP, and then what we showed in the Cooler Finance, is that the passive cooling strategies can curb the growth in demand for active cooling by about a quarter, by about 24%. So we need to really actively and dramatically increase the presence of passive cooling, because it's going to really lower the need for those active solutions that still need the energy from the grid. Good news is that passive cooling is very cost effective, and it can deliver thermal comfort to residents. That means that if thermal comfort is the concept of people who don't have an air conditioner, how will they stay in that very hot environment inside their house? And this, of course, is going to be resilient to things like blackouts. We are seeing a world where if everybody plugs in their air conditioner in the grid is very likely to collapse. And so even those with best active cooling strategies may have nothing if there's no access to electricity. Both IFC and UNEP provide a lot of information to governments that are looking to create green building codes that can help to raise the bar on passive cooling measures. This can be done through mandatory green building codes or through incentives. And we have done some analysis on the Global Alliance of Buildings and Construction's website that shows some of these best strategies in codes and incentives that both developing countries and European and American countries have done. Cool Coalition and Global ABC are working together with developers mostly in the Asian region, so for example, India, Vietnam, and Cambodia, to unlock private finance through some of the capacity building and pilot projects. In IFC's case, we work very closely with the private sector to show them the business case for such action. You will see in our report there is an entire chapter devoted to cooling in buildings. I wrote it, so I hope you like it. And you'll see a mention of several strategies. As I mentioned, green building codes, financial and non-financial incentives, social housing programs. And I think what's most important, a lot of information on ready-made tools that can be used to demonstrate the business case. One such tool is EDGE. This is IFC's own program for green buildings that's been, we're about to celebrate our 10th year in 2025. And the tool identifies resource efficiency measures and estimates the cost and the return on investment. This is the key, because it's the only tool out there that will help you understand not just how to lower the energy footprint of the building, but it helps the developers, the designer understand how much upfront does this cost me, and how will I pay that back if I'm the owner of the building, or how will I communicate that to my buyer or renter of the building. And as you can see from, this is a very quick screenshot of the EDGE tool. It's available online. You can go to edgebuildings.com today and play with it. EDGE first suggests passive cooling measures. Those are kind of the lower hanging fruit, the things that everybody can implement, and then walks the designer through other active measures as well. The buildings that finally get certified as green can get preferential financial terms. IFC works with many banks around the world that offer incentives, so lower interest rate, a rebate to the developer, a lower interest rate on the green mortgage. So many different instruments that we have that incentivize the adoption of the green buildings. Governments can also use the EDGE tool to understand what are going to be the most effective measures for green building codes. So you can use the EDGE tool, and if you're considering, let's say, dozens of measures for the green building code, you may find out that 2 or 3 of those are going to be the most effective. So rather than going to the private sector and saying, hey, you have to comply with 20 or 30 green building measures, you may realize that just 2 are going to give you, the 80% of what you need to do. And it's a lot easier for private sector to then implement that, and it's a lot easier for the government to then check if that actually has happened, rather than trying to check 20 or 30 measures. So we welcome you all to utilize the tool and to find out some of the best strategies. One of the case studies we have, so we're talking a lot about India. Obviously, the heat is very high. We do work in other places. Just happened that both our previous speaker and myself we're bringing you some of the case studies from India. This is from Ant Studios. They provide passive cooling technologies, innovative low-tech cooling solutions, and nature-based methods that help the buildings of all kinds, residential, governmental, commercial, industrial clients. They can lower their cooling costs, and they work with Indian universities to lab test some of these solutions. EDGE actually also has a program for universities. We call it DFGE, Design for Greater Efficiency. So a university can include that as part of their curriculum, or a student can actually do that independently and get a certificate from IFC, which is a great resume building and skill building measure. And this particular firm was profiled by UNEP in part because they provide pro bono assistance to those who have not been able to do it before. Oops, there we go. Another great case study is financing self-built homes. We presented this more in detail yesterday at the World Bank Group Pavilion, and I think that recording will also be available online on the World Bank Group websites. So this is the financing self-built housing work that we're doing in India. And what we did there, remember I said you can use the EDGE tool to find out the most effective solutions. So we found out what are the most effective strategies that work in the Indian climate that will make a home green, which means 20% less energy usage. And you can see on the left, the building has to comply with some of the strategies on the left. I try to circle the ones that are passive cooling. So the first two measures are passive, then it goes into some of the more active measures. They have to do something else on water, and then we have an optional solar design. If a home complies with this menu option, a few things that you have to do, a few things that you can choose from, it can actually be certified as green through a streamlined audit. And that home builder is then eligible for a discounted interest rate for their construction loan. And IFC is providing that through local financial institutions. India has these great home finance companies that have been working with. They have a great reach to residential customers. This has been immensely popular in India, and we're looking for ways to scale this up and have it available in other markets, with the idea of having a credibly green home that we can quite easily check. I'm going to leave you with just a quick analysis of the economic impacts of both passive cooling and other sustainable cooling measures. And what we're pointing out is that accelerating the adoption of cooling measures could lead to $8 trillion in avoided costs in developing economies by 2050. Everything from avoided power plants, savings for customers. And on top of this, developing countries could benefit from avoiding the negative impacts on health, education. I come from Bosnia. My sister is a teacher. They had to delay the school year by 2 weeks in the south of the country because it was too hot, and they literally could not go and start the school on that side. We would avoid the negative benefits of the well-being of women who tend to stay at home where it can be quite hot. We can avoid productivity losses caused by extreme heat events as workers in factories are exposed to extreme heat. All of these estimates provide a strong business case for passive and other sustainable cooling for governments, for businesses, and others. And I think this is very important kind of point to end on, because we can then build financial instruments. We can help firms make profits, we can help customers cut costs, investors make a return, and governments benefit from both environmental and other economic impacts as well. I'll leave you at that. You can download the report through the QR code. I think all of these slides and the recording of this will be available later on. Many thanks again to our donor, the UK government, without whose help this will not be possible. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. We look forward to building a very strong alliance through the Cool Coalition, UNEP, Global ABC, because this is one of those things where everybody does have to work on it together for a cooler future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rusmir. Thank you for this very comprehensive summary you gave about the report. As you say, so extreme heats that we need to address today is not only a matter of extreme heats, it's also a matter of frequency of the heat, the duration of the heat that we need to address in a very sustainable way. You have been presenting some green case studies Clearly, the reports mention the potential of passive cooling to curb these emissions by 24%, which is quite significant by 2050. Yeah, you can have a seat.
Sure.
I think it's more friendly, like to. Okay, so I have some prepared questions for you, Rusmir. So you were presenting these green case studies. You were also speaking about the building energy codes, incentives, available incentives. Adopting this kind of techniques, as I said at the beginning, which are already existing since centuries, but introducing it again to the consumer is maybe quite challenging, especially when it comes to some probably capex issues. Yeah, that can represent a barrier to the consumer when it comes to the implementations of these techniques, particularly in the new buildings or retrofit as well. I would like to ask you, what do you think, so in terms of capex, it can affect the return on investment through the years. What can be the barriers in developing low-income economies? You have been speaking about the India case, but also there are other regions of the world which are affected by extreme heats with a growing population that have right to access to cooling.
No, I think on the commercial buildings, exactly as you pointed out, we have to just change the mindset. So on the more high end, glass towers are not the best thing to do in a emerging economy. So and funny enough, glass is more expensive than regular wall. So helping the designers understand that not having glass towers as an office building is actually a cost-saving strategy. A green strategy is also cost-saving. On the low-income side, it's really trying to find some of these low-hanging fruits. So I mentioned painting the rooftop. We've done that analysis in Pakistan. Just white paint on the roof, very, very cheap, can actually really bring down the temperature. I have numbers. So we have a figure in the report that UNEP and IFC had done together. So let me look at. In India, we looked at external reflective surfaces and shading systems, payback period of 1 to 2 years. In Vietnam, maybe 3 to 4 years. So I think the idea there is helping to devise financial instruments that amortize and bring that cost over a period of time. So rather than having consumer having to pay that paint and pay for it completely upfront, helping them find a system where they can spread it over a number of years, and maybe it's included in their electricity bill, couple of different ways that we can spread the cost over the period of years. And I think that is one major solution that we're looking into.
And this information are provided by the tool?
Yes.
By the Edge tool?
Some of it, yes.
Yeah.
So Edge can help you understand, should you go for the roof? Should you go, maybe it's the windows, maybe windows are more expensive, and you can kind of analyze of.
Yeah. So
we're trying to do that now. I know the team in India, UNEP and IFC, are going to put together to say, if you're in Mumbai, very humid, these are going to be the things you should try. If you're in Delhi, where maybe it's a little bit drier, these are the things you want to do.
So it's very specific to the region. It's not adopting a cookie cutter approach.
Exactly.
Like this is the technology you need to apply for this.
Exactly. So I think that we as international institutions can make that work easier by we can do that analysis. That's what we did for the green buildings in India. We said, if you do these 3 things, and then 3 things from this list, one of the 3 things on this list, we can confidently say that this building is at least 20%.
Yeah. And what about the existing buildings? What to do with the existing ones? Are there any available solutions?
The existing buildings are a little bit harder. This is where I advise, again, I think that as international community, let's solve it on the commercial side, where proving the business case is a little bit helping hotels. Today is also a tourism day. I'll be speaking at the hotel
Yeah.
session later on at 2. We have a work through cities. I think that helping a commercial owner retrofit their building is maybe an easier way to go than helping homes where you have lots of different owners find a solution. It's not impossible. We just have to really demonstrate the business case. So I think we can. Commercial is maybe a little bit could be easier
Yeah.
and faster, and then the residential side, we just have to do more education on that front.
And what about the informal buildings?
Same thing.
know
I
this
think
is
on the informal side, it's about education, education, education. I was telling the story to my colleagues. I went to some of the slums in South Africa, and the guy there talked about and said, "I don't mind the winter. I can heat myself, but I do not like the summer because I cannot make myself comfortable."
Yeah.
So I think there is really showcasing to the residents that this is about their comfort. That a little bit of an investment can really bring down the temperature and make their space inside their home ultimately livable.
Yeah, so it's a kind of raising awareness, education at several levels when it comes to the importance of adopting passive cooling technologies, but also informing them about the available financial solutions as well. So yeah.
The heat hit 52 Celsius.
Yeah, more than.
You
50.
cannot rely on,
Yeah,
on
yeah.
older strategies. You have to do some more proactive work to bring down the temperature in your home at that
Yeah.
point.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I would like to open up the floor. Yes, please. I will give you mine.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, gentlemen. My name is Satoru Mizuguchi, freelance journalist. It's amazing and insightful information is included in the paper. My question is, how do you or will you diffuse the main findings of the report to financial sectors and the building sectors and the medias? Yeah, that's my questions.
Great question. We on the IFC and UNEP side, we've been partnering with different associations to do webinars and bring the reports. So we did the launch of the report was at the New York City Climate Week. We then did a global webinar. We did one webinar in Spanish. I'm happy to, wake up in the middle of the night and present this in different time zones. We have the information ready. We are happy to partner with you, come speak to me after the event, and we can do a bespoke webinar for your country, for your, groupings of people to send that information together. I just talked to our colleague in the webinar doesn't just talk about buildings. We do touch on refrigeration and others, and we're planning a webinar on cold chains and food safety, which we're going to try to do maybe in January or February. So
it's
we're
not only
we're
food; it's also health utilities.
health, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, the webinar has been recorded. I think it's on Vimeo. It should be on our website. So the findings and the webinar is on Vimeo, and I'll double check if they upload it on the website. If not, I'll remind our team and I'll send you the link.
Okay, I think we are right on time. Thank you so much, Rusmir, for this very comprehensive overview about the report. Please feel free to scan this QR code to access the report. And if you have any further information, we can interact after this event or exchange details with Rusmir. Thank you so much, Rusmir. Thank you. Okay, I'm now very delighted to invite my panelists to our panel discussion. I'm glad to invite Mr. Maurice Sakesh. Please have a seat. Mrs. Iman Gawad, welcome to the panel. Mr. Jayanta Chaudhry, please join us. And Mr. Anshul Abbasi. So please join us. I'm very delighted to see a so diversified panel, a collective effort. Yeah, please have a seat, please. Showcasing the necessity for us, all of us, to work together. We have policy analysts, architects, engineers. Probably instead of me presenting you, you would do it much better than I. Yeah, very quickly.
Thank you, our moderator, for the session. My name is Engineer Morris Akech from Kenya. Kenya, we like adding titles before our names. So I work for government. The institution is called National Construction Authority, which is an agency of government in charge of regulating construction sector in Kenya. Basically, standards and regulations for construction of buildings and all kinds of construction. I'm happy to join you this morning. And our role this morning is basically to give a response on how our organization, or my organization in Kenya, views the importance of passive cooling from a global or our country perspective. I've highlighted a few things that I want to bring before you in terms of our intervention on how Kenya works on this space of cooling. One of them is the policy, construction industry policy, which is a guiding document across the entire construction sector in integration with other connected sectors within the construction space. That particular policy is currently at a very high level cabinet, where the cabinet is the supreme decision-making of the arm of government of executive. And after it's approved, it will form the basis of how passive cooling will be integrated. But even before that, there is already a newly approved national building code, which already integrates concepts of green building practices that includes standards on energy efficiency, lighting, and ventilation, and also it promotes climate change within the guidelines. It's important to note that this being a new document, it's going to be effective from March of 2025, because when you launch a new product or a new guideline, it's good to give space for the old one to continue being implemented while the new one is being onboarded. Right now, we're in the space of what we do, what we're calling training, sensitization and awareness of the new building code, so that by March we'll now become effective. If we find any construction that's not compliant, we'll be able to suspend until they're compliant. We also, as an institution, we carry out project registration to ensure that they're compliant, and that will be very key from that space. I have a few other interventions. Maybe my colleagues can, so that you don't hear one voice throughout. My colleagues can intervene, then I come back. Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you, Maurice. If we can go, very brief introduction, and then we will open for questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jayant Chaudhary from Alliance from an Energy Efficient Economy, AEEE. We are a non-profit research think tank based out of India, and we are the lead partners for MOAFCC for development of the India Cooling Action Plan. So our organization also works extensively in sustainable building, sustainable cooling, demand flexibility, a lot of data analytics and modeling. I personally handle the industry relationship and marketing at AEEE. So absolutely a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, a brief introduction to the audience, and then we will carry on with the question. Just introduce yourself.
My name is Iman Gawed. I'm a professor of sustainable architecture in Helwan University, Cairo, Egypt. And I'm here to represent the International Union of Architects. I'm the co-director of the Sustainable Development Goals within the union. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Anshul Abbasi, and I work with the National Institute of Urban Affairs. It's the think tank to the Ministry of Urban Development in India. And our major job at NIUA, I am a part of the Climate Center. I lead the policy and planning vertical there. And our mandate is to support ministry with the policies, climate policies, and develop capacity of city officials across the country with respect to climate. And I also lead the data and technology vertical there, and working towards democratizing climate data in India.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
me here.
Thank you. So we have policy, architect, NGO country representative. So my question is, how do your organizations, your different organizations, look at the passive cooling technologies solutions? And you are also representing different countries. If you can give us some insights about how passive cooling techniques are adopted in your countries as well.
Thank you very much. As I indicated, I'm the CEO of National Construction Authority in Kenya under the Ministry of Lands, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works, in charge of standards and regulation. As a regulator, my role is basically to ensure that green building standards that have cooling embedded in them are implemented by various developers in the building sector. So we have a requirement to ensure that all projects are registered during, before commencement of any construction. It's at that stage that we check whether the standards have been incorporated in the design. We also carry out quality assurance checks during construction to ensure that the constructions are compliant. However, I need to note that this is still in the plan because it's in the newly approved building code. So come March next year, this will be implemented fully. But I also need to add a rider that even though it's in the building code, we are using the word may. May means it's not mandatory for that particular aspect. But because we have identified that particular gap, we're already in the space of, you can amend even before you begin. So we are now in the space of beginning a conversation on how do we ensure that it becomes mandatory. So as we wait for the code to become effective, the new building code, we also in the conversation that how do we ensure that we do what we call amendment to make it mandatory, number one. Number two, we also in conversation with the IFC arm of the World Bank, and I think we have a seminar next week to discuss on how to come up with what we call the standalone green construction standards, which will be an extension of the building code. In the building code, it's a mention and a standard, but in the green one, it will expand and give more aspects on issues of green or cooling. Most importantly, our country is very advantaged in the sense that we don't have extreme summer or extreme winter. So by designing naturally in terms of ventilation, siting, orienting the building around a site and positioning the windows, and then wind flow is also very good. So we can get natural cooling, which is actually passive. So we are very advantaged as a country, and this is very possible to achieve without using any active energy. So that's what we are doing as a country. Thank you.
Just to link to the country, as a country, how you are addressing the financial challenges? Because you are pushing towards this direction, right?
Yes.
But you need to come with some financial plans, and are you looking at this? Or?
Well, currently, our target is to ensure that it is self-financed by the various developers. But we're also looking at, in terms of the standards, to get support. Because if you have very good standards, it's easy to be implemented by the developers. But these standards, we are looking at support from various financing institutions to ensure that we have good standards that can promote free cooling, or what we call passive cooling.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Man, let's talk a little bit architecture.
May
Yeah.
I have the pointer?
Sorry?
May I have the pointer?
The pointer. Okay. The pointer. Yes.
Well, because we are architects.
Enlighten us a little bit about what available solutions are existing from our architecture point of view.
Yes, because we are architects, so we tend to grab the information graphically and visually more than talking about it. Actually, I'm not gonna like focus on numbers or graphs that all the other speakers were tackling, but we have this additional goal is to have the awareness among young architects, because we are representing more than 3 million architects worldwide. We're the only NGO responsible to deliver the message of architects to globally. So we have this kind of guidebook that we call our goal to 2030. It's translated in different languages. It has 4 editions till now. And we have several call for architects, young architects, students, even unrealized projects. Throughout the ages or throughout the last mandate and this one, we had this idea that we don't tackle the cooling strategies only in the south or in the countries that had to have a passive cooling. In fact, we did receive some of the projects from the north because, you know, nowadays even Europe has heat waves as we all suffer in the south as well. So when we had this call for the guidebook, we had several vernacular architecture strategies like the bamboo ones, the straw, and so on. And when we had also the nominated winners to come to, we just came from Kuala Lumpur Forum of the UIA, we were surprised to see that they have their own initiatives within their own home countries. For example, this site is the Bamboo Initiative, where they are offering a free mentoring and workshops for whoever is interested in building in bamboo. Some other thing that we have also is the UIA 2030 Award. It's a joint project between UN Habitat and UIA, and we launched we revealed the winners in the WOOF in Cairo, the World Urban Forum, in its 12th edition 2 weeks ago. And we also had some very unusual techniques of cooling. For example, not only the vernacular one, but we received some of the informal settlement solution. They invented their own solutions to initiate within this particular challenge that they face. And finally, we are also proud to have this very large idea competition between students. It's called the Great Green Wall. The Great Green Wall is already an initiative within the continent, the African continents, to fight in the sub-Saharan section of the continent, to fight the dehydration or the desertification of all these northern countries within the southern part. So we had several also, but let me say that they are not only unusual, but they will tackle the perspective of the student. The student is a user of the home. He's also one of the residents in this part of the countries, but we didn't want only to have only students from the African countries. So it was an open call for the 5 regions of the UIA. We call the region of the UIA, which is the continent, and we received some inconvenient solutions from the north also to this kind of challenge that we face. You can see that they are using the vernacular kind of solutions in different countries, and also they are developing their own. I don't want to take much more from the others, but
yeah, nice to see these vernacular solutions that we are using nowadays. Thank you. Do you have a quick question, Iman? So is there any innovative passive solutions that now the architects are trying to develop, or are we using back to the time the technologies that we are, as the case studies you have been speaking about?
Well, actually, it's a very important question because in less formal level of architects, for example, the students and the young architects, we find out that they use the tradition from the vernacular architecture, but they have this computer mindset, so they are applying it in a more software application, but they have the theories from the vernacular architecture and they adopt it in a more modernized way. So this is what we are after, because if we are having only the vernacular architecture, we will remain within this loop. But to find the merge between the modernization of this kind of passive design is what we are aiming for.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you would like to add something, or okay, so Jayanta, from an NGO perspective, how you are looking at passive cooling, and if you can share any learnings or any experience that AEEE has been doing on the field.
Yeah, thank you. I think from an organization perspective, there are two kind of things that we focus on. One is, I think onset is, you can keep pouring water in a bucket with holes, it's never going to fill it up. So that's something that drives everything that we do, which is more energy efficiency. And the second is, the first poster you will see in our organization is called Lean, Mean, and Green. So that's a policy that we promote across, especially in the built environment, is you need to design lean. That's all passive. You need to bring down the cooling load. Then, of course, you have the most energy efficient appliances. You go mean, and then green. The sad part is in India, the green comes first. And, so that's always a challenge that we are trying to beat there. Second, I think the first two speakers, especially Rasmi, I think the data, they spoke more about India, actually deleted most of the points that I thought I'll speak about. But just a couple of complementary points. One is, so wet bulb temperature in India, as you probably would know, it's across 34 in many cities. It's about to touch 38. So that's beyond human survival. Another number that we track is the person-degree cooling days. In India is about 3 trillion. That's 3 times of China, 6 times probably of US and Europe all combined together. So in these conditions, there is no way on earth we can meet that 8x cooling demand that's forecasted, till 2050. So passive has to come first, and I think there is absolutely no option about that. And to provide thermal comfort, I think that's there. So from a policy side, what we see in India is probably start with some positives. So, we are leading one of the steering committees at Niti Aayog, which is the advisory arm, on the built environment, on thermal comfort. And we do see a lot of positive traction on, what should be the next steps, how do we make that mandatory and get into the rules, regulations. I think that's something that, we at AEEE are driving there. We see a lot of positives as well as also on the cool roof policy. It got started with Telangana earlier. A lot of other states are working on it. Not so ICAP is of course there, but the not so great is the implementation, the notification of the building codes. It's just not there to the level that is required. I think that's something that we're promoting. I think from a private sector perspective, there are a lot of success stories in India which organizations are adopting. That's one case study we did with Infosys. So it was like over a 50 million square feet of their real estate. They managed to get a factor for efficiency. They did not follow the rule of thumb and they challenged the status quo. They brought down their connected load by 32 megawatts, I think. Their EPI was less than 65, and I'm talking about a few years back. And they have made all the technology, their learnings open. So I think that's something that we are seeing positive. A lot of other organizations are following that. And last, I think for us, capacity building is very important, and as Rasmi mentioned, so we run the Solar Decathlon India program. Today has become the world's largest collegiate challenge for designing net zero energy and water buildings. We have trained more than about 5,500 students, almost 1,000 faculty members of the best universities, and we focus on architects and engineers both. We work with real estate partners on live projects, developers, architects, consultants. So that's allowing us to really reach out and build capacity at a level. And again, it's deeply focused on passive, on embodied carbon, and of course, affordability and replicability is the key. So these are some of the areas that we see are critical to our work and what's going to be important for India.
Thank you for the mention about. The necessity, how fundamental is to build capacities if we would like to sustain the solutions.
Absolutely. We need to have the next generation of leaders.
Trained for that, and thank you so much. So thank you for sharing insights from an Indian perspective. I would like to continue with you, and Shul also from a policy perspective. You are from the National Institute of Urban Affairs. Passive cooling is not, to my knowledge, is not only limited to the building, but also to the cities. If you can tell us a little bit more what you are doing in terms how to address the island effect, or how is it called, the heat island? Yeah, the heat island, and how to combine this with solutions in terms of buildings as well.
Thank you so much. I think I'll be covering the points in 3 Ps. That is the policy, planning, and what we are doing with people. So with respect to cooling, I'll just state a fact here that in the first 9 months of 2024, India experienced extreme weather events 255 out of 274 days, we saw one or another extreme event. This includes heat wave, urban flooding. Why I mention this is that there is a correlation. We cannot see heat wave in isolation. We cannot see urban flooding in isolation. The codependency of these events has to also be should also be studied, and that's what at NIUA we are trying to do. With respect to passive cooling in particular, we were a part of the development of long-term low-emission development strategy. That is the roadmap for India to go net zero by 2070. At NIUA, I was leading the chapter on material efficiency, building energy performance, efficient municipal systems. So that's where we have incorporated the policy level nudges which are required for mainstreaming cooling at the country level. These include multiple measures, both structural and non-structural measures, such as cool roofs, promotion of cool roofs. For example, one of the suggestions was to have, for every new construction of building with more than 500 square meter of area, the cool roof should be mandatory. Mandatory adaptive reuse. I think that is something which I would like to stress on, that while we talk about heat, we talk about passive cooling, embodied carbon is something which, as an organization, as NIUA, we're really focusing on. When I talk about embodied carbon, I'll just bring out a case of a city of Junagadh in India. The city has immense heritage buildings, and they do not have a clue of what to do with them, because there are aspirations. People want to build, they want to bring them down, bring new construction, convert them into hotels. The city has an immense tourism potential. So apart from the long-term low-emission development strategy, NIUA, we developed climate action plans. And one of the cities was Junagadh. And what we suggested, just giving one example from there, that cities can simply invest in this heritage as an early loan, some incentive or a subsidy for people to retain this, to maintain this, and few benefits like maybe a license to run these as homestays and some exemption on the fee which they collect. So I think these are the innovative ways which we have tried to explore, that linking climate change to heritage, to tourism, and this could become an innovative financing model. So this is the one thing we have tried at Junagadh. Then similarly for Pune and Jamnagar, we have come up with other things. Again, coming back to the framework level, we have something known as Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework, which has 5 themes. One of the themes is energy and green buildings. That's where we assess cities. We started in 2019. In the recent assessment, we assessed 226 cities. So we not just assess cities, we provide them with tailor-made recommendations that how they improve. We do a lot of capacity building. In last 2 years, we have trained more than 3,500 city officials on the themes of energy and green buildings, that how they can incorporate green buildings, they can scale it up, what are the institutional mechanisms which are required. We are pushing for a green building cell in each ULB as NIUA. Apart from that, if I have to, like, there are many more things which mostly you have covered. We are also part of the Niti Aayog committee of the green buildings. I'm personally a part of it. So there's a lot of push which is happening on policy level, but the real problem is that how this gets implemented on ground. And that's where finance becomes really important. So if you may allow, I can just continue with the finance.
Yeah, if you can, very quickly tell us a bit more about the financial challenges and barriers you're facing.
So to be honest, I think I've been talking about disaster. I've been talking about adaptation, wherein there is some kind of finance which is required, and I've been talking about green bonds, carbon credit. To be honest, when it comes to buildings, the sector of passive cooling, I think the cost of passive cooling is simply common sense innovation. And nothing more than that, because it is actually, all the measures are quite bankable. Rasveer, I think you'll be happy to hear about that. For all the 4 climate action plans, we use the EDGE tool. And I'm really thankful for such an amazing tool. We actually came up with the reduction potentials of different measures. We have turned it into a small example of a house, that what kind of a reduction potential could be there, and we have shared it in our climate action plans. We've also requested for a special training wherein we train all city officials, because I think the most important thing is advocacy. In India, if I'm as a citizen, if I can save 10 to 15% from something, I'm definitely going to invest in it. I don't need incentives. I don't need loans. I think it's just the information which has to be passed to people. And anything which is bankable, we Indians are always ready to invest in it. But apart from that, there could be funding majorly into the advocacy part of it, capacity building part of it, few pilots. It's really important to show few proof of concepts. Once it's there, the replicability, scalability is not an issue in India. So I think that's all from my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anshu. I would like to, questions. Good. We have 2 questions. Can we start with Sir? Because
Thank you very much. I am Gaëtan Xiu from also the International Union of Architects. I will give you a small example to illustrate the question of innovative ways and at the same time the question of finance. I was interviewed once by a journalist about this question specific. Please give me the latest innovative ways for tropical design, architecture, etc. My answer was, I will give you two examples, one short term, one long term. Short term, just open the window. Say long term, please plant a tree in front of the window and then you'll get, So this brings back the basic of it. How do you incentivize? How do you finance solutions like this which are totally intangible? How do you measure all this? This is a big question. Of course, the upfront investment is negligible, but the savings in the lifetime of the buildings are very important, up to 40% in some cases in terms of energy, etc. So we need the incentives, but we need it. I'm happy to have heard IFC and EDGE to really have measured the intangible for us to be able to encourage the people there. So this is my question to you. How do you incentivize those things that are totally intangible and almost not possible to measure? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, gentlemen and ladies, and also you. I have a very related questions. To diffuse passive cooling globally, I think at least we need 3 steps. First, we rediscover traditional, conventional knowledge, but it has to be innovated by modern science and technologies. And the third, we need to standardize the method region by regions. So rediscover stage and innovation stage and the standardization stage, and each stage has its own uniquely designed finance. So how do you think about this financial issues? Thanks. Satoru Mizuguchi, freelance journalist.
thank you so much for your question. So who would like to take this? Yes. Yeah.
I will tackle the first part of your question because when you are using the vernacular architecture themes or theories, you are building, you're building from beneath your foot. So this is the least that can be affordable. We don't have to calculate anything because it's there, it's regenerated, and it's the least that we can afford. But when you combine it with the modern way of living or the modernized way of designing, it should be more calculated, because when you find the proper tool within the same region and the same vernacular design theories, it would be manageable in different regions separately. So yeah, it's important to realize the connection between vernacular architecture and modernized way, but in a more calculated way.
Thank you. I think the question, I think there is enough money. I think we have been trying to beat the myth that, passive is expensive. But again, I think you did mention concessional financing. But our experience, when you're talking about a pure concessional financing based on passive technology, has not been that great. So we worked with State Bank of India, which is the largest public sector bank, with a 270 million euros credit line from KfW. And the parameter was thermal properties, RETV value. we are having a tough time, getting projects. In India, most of the buildings are getting manufactured by MyVan. None of them qualify for the numbers. We studied the entire portfolio of SBI. Not one building met the numbers which is on thermal performance. So it's easy to say concessional leading, and again, it's just not I think, practical from, I would say, the large developers and others' perspective. The smaller ones, yes. Ant Studio actually is one of our members and works very closely with us in Solar Decathlon. We have a very positive ecosystem that's working on a lot of the vernacular, I think, the technology solutions, and they have decent funding in India from a startup ecosystem perspective. I think the challenge is, how do you mainstream it and how do you take it to scale? And that's where I think, to be honest, inertia, and probably second, I would say, hidden incentives that prevents the proliferation of passive cooling technologies, especially in the built environment in India. I think that's something that we need to break the nexus as a larger group and see how do we, kind of promote that.
I have a personal question. So, where do research and development sit in all this? I've been hearing from a policy perspective, from architects. How can the research contribute with?
So we are seeing this in two ways. One is through case studies. I think we find that's a very good way. I gave the example of Infosys. We are working with Capgemini and others. I mean, they have also done it on both leased and owned buildings. They have an EPI of 62 and less. So I think that model works well when you're actually able to show them. Second is a lot of, as I said, there's a lot of investment flowing into the startup ecosystem who are working on a lot of these passive technologies. And as a part of the Solar Decathlon, we have something called a Climate Smart Innovation, CSI, where we are encouraging these organizations to come and showcase their solution at the Infosys campus, where we actually do the finals even. We have some 800 plus folks there. And last time, the best technologies were just picked up by Infosys for a demonstration there. So to your question, I mean, the R&D, it basically, one is outreach, getting them on the face. And again, how do you really support them in scaling it up? And again, scalability and case study, I think they normally work well.
Okay, thank you so much. We have another question from Mr. from Guidehouse.
Yes, it's not a question, but it's a part of an answer to your question.
Thank you for providing with. I much appreciated your comment about why are we looking up for innovative solution while it's possible to,
Tradition.
We
have one of our members, Costa Rica, a good pupil, rank first in renewable energy, 99% in the world. They have an institute of tropical architecture. They've done all the research for the last 25 years, and they have built standards, and even they have built a certification with which our organization have worked with them. When we say a lot of passive cooling, etc., the easy solution for residential, it's very easy, but for tall buildings, for large buildings, then you get into the difficulties. And they have now all the certification, the assessment, the criteria, and it's called RESET, which is an equivalent of LEED, etc., but for tropical countries. And I think it will go well and even get engaged with EDGE in the future. We can connect all the people with that.
The power of collaboration. That's good. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for your question, sir. I think that's a very common question which I hear about traditional wisdom and innovation, that why don't we simply go back to the traditional wisdom. I think that is the same case for nature-based solutions as well. We have been using few nature-based solutions. My answer to it is that there was a different climate scenario at some point of time. These practices were applicable, they were designed at that time. With climate change, the intensity, the frequency, the climate patterns have changed. So I think, to answer your question, R&D becomes a great tool for a scientific inquiry of our traditional practices, that's where they can play a big role, that how applicable they are in today's time and how applicable they will be in future, and what kind of changes are required. So that is the one thing which is really crucial, which has to be done, so that there is not a blind application of a practice. Instead, there is an application of a principle in future, and that's where the practice evolves. So that is one thing, and that's where the role of innovation comes in. And it's about balancing two AIs, artificial intelligence and ancestral intelligence. I think that's where we need to look at, because there could be extremes, people talking against artificial intelligence. It's a tool, it's an enabler. We have to see like things like Edge tool, how they are enablers. But we try to bring that principle with this tool and we implement. I think that is the key towards a sustainable future, and that's where the role of R&D comes into play. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, oh, good. So we have 3 other questions. Okay. Good to see so proactive session. Yeah.
Thank you. Usha Raniga, Professor Sustainable Built Environment from RMIT University. 2 points. The first one, I think, and that sort of leads to the point that you were making, we really need to also think about how we educate design professionals. At the moment, design professionals are being taught to emulate designs from the West and not really take pride in vernacular or bioclimatic design. So I think that's the first point. The second one, and that's a big job. It's a big job to change that across the world, particularly in the developing regions. But the second point also, and that again, you talked about the principles. I think in addition to the principles of bioclimatic or vernacular design is also the need to think about post-occupancy evaluations. So you talked about qualitative, and if you include healthy environments as part of that qualitative, comfortable environments as part of that qualitative, not just thinking about the quantitative measurements, I think we'll go a long way, and that's the sort of message that needs to be given out. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
No, just a comment. So we have been addressing the issue in the global south, but we need to be inclusive and also recognize global work is global. Yeah, also regions in the global north, yeah, are also impacted. 62,000 people were dead in Europe. Do you think, what is the connection in terms of opportunities, in terms of, I don't like this. What are the solutions existing according to your experience in the global north? Are we able to duplicate?
I don't think we can duplicate.
Because
we need place-based responses. So what happens in Finland is not going to work in Nigeria. And I'm from Australia. We have different sets of issues. We have bushfires. We have floods. We have had floods in the same area 3 times in 2 years. So we really need to start thinking about how do we ensure that the responses are place-based, and it's dynamic. So we are actually making decisions in the face of uncertainty. So we're making decisions in unknown unknowns, and that's a difficult part, and that's where R&D becomes really critical.
Oh, thank you. I believe we have another question. If you can quickly introduce yourself first to the audience.
So my name is Gajmin. I'm from Iraq. I'm the co-founder of the largest climate action organization in our country. So my question is, the construction situation in our country, like it's the worst. I mean, when we talk about the climate and how to be like a cooler future, it's not for us. So a group of engineers, local engineers from our organization, we started that with the government and UNICEF, like collaboration, that we want to have this pillar, like till 2030, to have, for example, a local framework about how we can go to a cooler future for that. So I have 2 questions, actually. The first one, what's your advice for us? I mean, from where we can start and how we start for that, because just like I said, it's in the very beginning and it's very new for us, but our country has a lot of potentiality to go forward for that, because just like I said, we have like the worst situation when it comes to the construction. This is the second thing. Does anyone of you, or even your organization, do partnerships with the local countries or organizations to help them, for having this framework so that we can work on it? And of course, it should be Iraqi local framework because, just like mentioned, it's different situations. Yeah.
Strengthening partnership and collaboration. Yeah.
Allow me at beginning to answer one of your questions regarding the joint projects between the North and South. Ironically, the North has this leading research institutes, and they are now, after having some of the South partners, to have more funds. When you have this kind of merge between the two parts of globally, you have more fund. But for example, let me give you an example of one of the initiatives that we have seen recently. Columbia University in the States and Copenhagen University in Denmark are launching a project where they are asking the North and the South to develop the implementation of the SDGs, the UN SDGs, within their curriculum. But in certain way, for example, when we are searching for shading devices, when we are focusing on the northern part of the world, we are searching for shading to eliminate the glare of entering the sun. In the same time, shading in the south to eliminate the overheating. So when we find that we have a joint aim, it's in different application within the local climate. Something else to answer your question, there are several initiatives with the global funding agencies, like Erasmus, for example. Also, some of the regional entities in your area, like the Middle East and the Arab countries as well.
Thank you so much, Iman. Yeah?
I think to answer your question, there is enough knowledge, I think, which is available in terms of passive cooling. And in terms of other technologies, also sustainable technologies, enough R&D, financing mechanism. So just taking an example that if someone is not well, they have all the possible medicines which can cure available to them. It is maybe the biggest question is they don't know how much to take at what time. That is the first question we need to answer as an industry, that what and why is quite really established, how and when of the solutions to be provided. That's where I think your framework could really leverage it on. The second thing is if the person is not ready to take that medicine, that's where the aspirations come in. And that's I'm talking from an Indian perspective. If there is an aspiration to have a glass building, there's an aspiration to Ape West. That's where the biggest hindrance, I think, for most of the solutions. I think down the line, 5 to 10 years, maybe globally, we would be aware of what solutions we need. We might have the finance. It would be the acceptance of citizens. So that how we bring in community, and that's where not just the behavior, the psychology also comes into play. So for a sustainable future, we need to really invest right at the education level, so that maybe, like just taking an example from India, it's been like few decades that we got freedom, and people see owning a car as an aspiration. Building a house with glass, they see it as a status symbol. How do you break that? And I think that's where the maximum amount of emissions can be affected. So I think that was my response to your question. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. 3 minutes to pick another question. Yes. Okay, can I use yours?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Iran from the Singapore National Climate Change Secretariat. We coordinate climate policies for the whole of the government. I have a question on what you just said. I think a lot of conversation today has been about there are available solutions, but yet people don't always implement them. Have you seen effective policies that sort of break that by either mandating certain level of passive cooling and how that kind of fits into the overall buildings regulations? Because I agree with education, but it's going to take a really long time, and some of the actions needs to be taken today because buildings have such a long lifespan. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. So quick action to, yeah.
Maybe you're absolutely right. I think the carrot and stick policy, I think, that works well. But I think the biggest challenge, as he also mentioned, that I think notification and implementation of the building codes have been a huge challenge. For an example, data disclosure is something that we have been pushing for very hard. that's not happening. So I think from a policy perspective, I think if these are a couple of things which can be enforced and implemented, and we have seen that in very, very tough, I think, policies and other processes. Once the government actually mandates it, automatically the industry and everybody follows. But the question is intent, lobbying, and various other forces which are at work, which kind of prevents. So we have great policies in India, but frankly, the implementation is always a huge challenge. That will remain. So I think you just need a strong government to kind of push that. I mean, that's from my perspective to your question, maybe.
I think the important part of the question has been answered by him. I will just take an instance from India that while the policies are there, implementation, what is more important is again comes to citizens, that how actually to use it. When we talk about capacity building, one way is you tell them how to develop a solar passive building for passive cooling or heating. But what is, once it is constructed, how to use it? So Leh is one of the cities in India which is extremely cold. The temperature goes to even minus 40 degrees Celsius. And there is a lot of proliferation of these passive heating structures there. And it is also a tourist town. So what has happened, all these solar passive buildings are there, wherein they keep the rooms really heated during the day without any artificial or active measures. It's simply that at night, the windows have to be open for some time so that there could be air changes and things. And if those kind of training are not given to people. So what happened, when it is summers there, the temperature is around 15 degree, this becomes a heating chamber. All you need to do is, during the summers, you have to inform the tourists that you need to open the window. If they don't do it, they'll feel hot. And as a kind of a suggestion which came in to a hotel which is solar passive, they eventually had to install an AC. So that is how, if the technology you are proposing is not well taken by the user, you might end up even turning it into another devastating thing. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. I believe we have made it on time, only 5 minutes left. Before closing, inviting Madame Marcia Yu, I would like to thank you all for making yourself available for this side event. One final key message I would like to convey is, of course, it is extremely important and fundamental to address the passive cooling technologies, but we should consider also the active cooling, the mechanical cooling, how we can address energy efficiency, not only in terms of operating in an efficient way, and that has to do with technicians, but also at the design and adapting to extreme heats, designing our system in order to operate efficiently to address these extreme heats, and the adoption of low GWP in clean refrigerants. So it's a holistic approach that we need to address. Yeah. Thank you so much. I would like to invite Madame Marcia Yu, Manager, Manufacturing, Agri, Business and Service Europe. So you see, I'm using your card.
Thank you. Okay. I can do this, yeah. No, I don't have slides. So obviously this was a very interesting and insightful panel. I think if we had gone on for another 30 minutes, we could still, continue to ask questions. We have heard from Rusmir from the panel the what, the why, the how of sustainable cooling. And perhaps I can just take the next 1 to 2 minutes just reiterating IFC's support, right, in green buildings and in sustainable cooling. For us, cooling has been embedded in our green buildings program, as Rusmir has said. Over the past 10 to 12 years, we have actually supported, we've actually helped to green 94 million square meters of green building, from affordable housing to offices to warehouses. And we have helped to save 2 million tons of carbon dioxide. And on the back of the EDGE Green Buildings program, we have also provided financing, whether it's green bonds, green loans, sustainability-linked financing, right, to really help asset owners and developers or financial institutions in greening, our place or our earth. Perhaps just one message, whether you are an NGO or an association, if you want to know how to do this, IFC has the tools to help. as you've heard from Maurice also, right, we have training programs that could help you, sort of integrate into your education system. If you're the government, we have case studies of how we have helped cities and governments to put in regulations or building codes, rewrite building codes, and so forth. And more importantly, if you're the private sector, we have the business case for doing green. So again, if you're going to build it good, build it green, and build it cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So all solutions are there. Yeah, business case, finance, technology. It's only about the will. And I would like to invite you all to have a group photo. So thank you so much for the audience for the very interactive session. And thank you so much for our panelists for giving your insights and valuable contribution. I would like to propose one photo with the panel first and then invite everybody. Okay? But I don't know who will take the photo. I don't know.